Let's talk about truth, the kind that stings at first but heals in the end. There is a massive life-altering difference between someone making a mistake and someone making a decision. A mistake is rooted in poor judgment, lack of awareness, or an emotional blind spot. It's what we do when we're human, messy, and still growing. A mistake says, I didn't know better in that moment, but I wish I had. But a decision, that's different. A decision says, I knew this would hurt you, and I did it anyway. A decision is calculated. It's measured. Sometimes it's even wrapped in charm or dressed up in good intentions. But no matter how it looks on the outside, when someone chooses to cross a line that they know matters to you, it's not a mistake, it's betrayal. And when you try to treat a decision like it was a mistake, you end up betraying yourself. You rationalize their behavior, you downplay your pain, you tell yourself, maybe I'm overreacting. Even when your gut is screaming, you put your empathy in the driver's seat and your boundaries in the trunk. But here's the truth. When someone intentionally causes harm, that's not an accident you can clean up. That's a choice they made with full awareness of its cost, and they chose it anyway. Let's emotional pain and the myth of forgive and forget clear something up. Something many of us were never taught growing up. Boundaries are not cruel. They are not harsh. They are not a form of revenge. They are clarity. They are protection. And most importantly, they are self-respect in action. Somewhere along the way, many of us were conditioned to believe that saying no was mean or that walking away from harmful relationships made us unforgiving or cold. We were told that keeping the peace was more important than honoring our pain. That we should be the bigger person even when it meant shrinking ourselves to fit into a relationship that chipped away at our dignity. But here's the truth. A boundary is not a wall. It's a bridge that tells others how they can be in relationship with you in a way that's healthy, respectful, and safe. When someone has intentionally damaged you, choosing to no longer allow them access to your energy, your heart, or your life, that's not punishment. That's you drawing a sacred line and saying, I matter. My peace matters. My safety matters. It's not a declaration of war. It's a declaration of worth. You are not obligated to make room for people who've repeatedly shown you that they don't know how to care for your heart. You don't owe continued access to someone simply because they're sorry or because they're persistent. Sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Sorry doesn't undo intentional harm. Sorry doesn't grant automatic reentry. Better can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you've spent years confusing people-pleasing with kindness. But every time you say, this is not okay, or I will not allow this behavior in my life again, you are reinforcing a deeper truth. The psychology behind repeated hurt, you are no longer abandoning yourself to keep someone else comfortable. And maybe they'll call you harsh. Maybe they'll say you're overreacting. Maybe they'll try to twist your boundary into evidence that you are the problem. But listen closely. Healthy people respect boundaries. Unsafe people are offended by them. So the next time you feel guilt creeping because you're drawing a line, remember this, you're not punishing them. You're protecting the version of you that finally realized she's worthy of more, and that that's not selfish. That's sacred. Empathy is beautiful. It's powerful. It's one of the most courageous traits we can possess. The ability to step into someone else's shoes, to feel with them, to see the world through their pain. But let me say this clearly and without apology. Empathy should never come at the cost of your own well-being. Too often we confuse empathy with obligation. We believe that because we understand someone, we have to excuse them. That if we can trace the roots of their behavior, childhood trauma, unhealed wounds, emotional immaturity, we are somehow required to remain available, compassionate, forgiving even when their behavior is harming us. But here's the hard truth. You can understand why someone hurt you and still choose to walk away. You can say, I see your pain, but I will not let it bleed all over me. You can say, I have compassion for where you've been, but that doesn't mean I will allow you to trample over where I'm going. Empathy becomes dangerous when it turns into self-abandonment. When you silence your own needs in the name of being understanding, when you dismiss your hurt with, they didn't mean to, even though they showed you they didn't care to stop. When you stay, not because it's healthy, but because you feel why you must set clear, firm boundaries guilty for leaving someone who's clearly still broken. But here's what I want you to hear deep in your bones. You are not responsible for healing people who continue to harm you. Empathy is a bridge to connection, not a contract for self-sacrifice. You can feel for someone and still protect yourself. You can love someone and still say, "Not like this." You can hope the best for them and still say from a distance, empathy doesn't mean you have to invite them back in. It doesn't mean you have to absorb the consequences of their choice. It doesn't mean your heart has to keep stretching until it snaps. And if you were taught that loving someone means enduring their pain at your own expense, let me gently and firmly tell you that's not empathy. That's eraser. Real empathy includes you too. It's not only about honoring someone else's story. It's about honoring your own voice, your own needs, and your own emotional safety. So keep your heart soft, stay compassionate, but never again confuse empathy with a permission slip to betray yourself. The kind that isn't tidy or tied up with a bow, or the kind that doesn't lead back to the same person who hurt you. Forgiveness is not a reunion. It is not a second chance. It is not an invitation to return to what broke you. Forgiveness is a process of release, not return. It's you choosing to put down the weight of resentment so it no longer poisons your peace. It's you saying, "I will not allow your choices to have power over my nervous system, my future, or my voice any longer." That we've been sold a dangerous lie. That forgiveness is only real if it ends in reconciliation. That if you've truly let go, you should also let them back in. But here's the truth. Forgiveness happens in your heart. Reconciliation happens in a relationship. And those are two entirely different things. One can happen without healing begins with choosing yourself first the other. In fact, sometimes it must. Forgiveness is a solo act. It's deeply internal. It's for you, not them. It doesn't require an apology. It doesn't require their presence. It doesn't even require that they've changed, because sometimes the people who hurt you will never take responsibility. Sometimes they will rewrite the story to cast themselves as the victim. Sometimes they'll expect you to move on without ever doing the work of repair. And in those cases, forgiveness is not saying it's okay. Forgiveness is saying it's over. You don't get to hold space in my mind anymore. Letting go does not mean forgetting. It means remembering without reliving. It means you can tell the story of what happened without trembling, without rage, without needing them to feel what you felt. And sometimes the most powerful act of forgiveness is simply this: closing the door, locking it, and walking away with your head high. Reconciliation, on the other hand, is a joint effort. It requires remorse, repair, accountability, and change. Requires both parties to show up not just with words, but with new behaviors. Without those things, reconciliation isn't healing. It's self-abandonment dressed up in spiritual language. It needs a space where your nervous system can exhale, where you're not constantly analyzing tone, reading between the lines, or preparing for the next emotional ambush. We like to believe that we can heal while staying connected to the people who broke us, that we can find our footing while still standing on cracked ground. But the truth is, healing cannot happen in chaos. It cannot happen in a relationship where you are constantly being re-injured. And let's name this because it matters. If someone intentionally damaged you and you are still in contact with them, still trying to work it out, still giving them access to the soft parts of your soul, your healing is not just don't let fear of loneliness keep you trapped stalled. It's under attack. There's a version of you wiser, more grounded, more whole on the other side of that pain. But you won't meet her until you remove yourself from the places and people that made her disappear in the first place. Safety isn't just about the absence of violence. It's about emotional security. And it's about knowing you can speak without being mocked, feel without being punished, say no without fearing abandonment, lust without guilt, laugh without tension. And here's what no one tells you. Sometimes you have to build that safety for yourself. Sometimes it means saying goodbye to someone you love. Sometimes it means drawing a boundary that feels like a wall, but is actually a lifeline. Sometimes it means choosing loneliness over loyalty to dysfunction. And that is not weakness. That is wisdom. You are not meant to carry your healing into battlegrounds. You are not designed to bloom in places where your soul is being stepped on. You are allowed, encouraged to choose peace even if it disappoints the person who hurt you, especially if it does, because your healing is not a negotiation. It's not something you earn by being agreeable. It's not something someone else gets to control. Healing begins when you choose you. When you say no more, when you create space for softness, silence, honesty, and breath. You don't have to be brave in the presence of danger. You have to be brave enough to walk away from it and into the safety you deserve. You are not unkind for refusing to reopen a door that someone intentionally slammed on your heart. Oh, you are not bitter for protecting yourself. You are not unforgiving for walking away from someone who had every chance to treat you with care and chose not to. You have every right to choose peace over chaos. Final words: reclaim your peace and power. You have every right to honor the pain you didn't deserve. And you have every right to protect the version of you that finally said, no more. This isn't about revenge. This isn't about being hard or heartless. This is about learning to recognize the difference between a person who made a human mistake and one who made a clear, conscious decision to harm you and never looked back. You don't need another apology. You don't need them to understand the damage. You don't even need closure from their side. You are the closure. Every boundary you hold, every second chance you refuse, every quiet decision to heal in peace, that is your closure. That is your healing. So, if you've been waiting for a sign to stop giving your heart back to people who keep dropping it, this is it. You deserve love that doesn't require you to shrink, to beg, or to bleed quietly. You deserve safety. You deserve freedom. You don't owe anyone a second chance to hurt you the same way twice. And maybe the most radical, self-loving thing you can do is to believe them the first time. Forgive for your peace and never hand them the keys to your heart again. You are not wrong for closing the door. You are finally right where you need to be on your own.